Hey everyone, it's Stacey with NutritionJobs and another edition of Dietitian Career Success. Okay, I know a lot of you have been very interested in working in non-traditional roles, maybe working for a big corporation, maybe working in pharmaceuticals, pharmaceutical sales, medical sales. You're in for a treat because I have an amazing dietitian that is going to speak to us on all of those areas. And so please welcome having Maria Karalis here today to talk to us about the pharmaceutical industry. Hi, Maria.
Hi there. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for being here. Maria and I met through a mastermind mini group with Nutrition Entrepreneurs Dietetic Practice Group, which I highly recommend. There's always some little pearl. And for me, this was being able to make a connection with Maria and learn all that she did. And while she was talking about what she did, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, okay, we've got to get her here on the episodes to share all of her knowledge with all of you. So Maria, maybe you can give us a little bit of background about your career path. I know you've been in the pharmaceutical industry for many years. You're doing something different now, but maybe start back how your path to becoming a dietitian in the industry.
Oh, sure. It's a great question. Great way to start. So I was always intrigued by how people lost weight from, even in high school. It's that's kind of where my love of that began. And I was always picking up every single nutrition article or nutrition magazine I could get my hands on and talking to people about their weight loss strategies and just their tools and techniques for keeping weight off. So that began in high school. I pursued my degree at University of Illinois at Chicago. And then shortly after that, I went into nephrology. So I was a nephrology dietitian for about 10 years. And at the end of that 10-year time frame, I went and got my MBA. And it took me a while to think about, should I get my MBA? Should I get my master's in nutrition? And I don't regret the decision at all. Having an MBA really opened up lots more doors of opportunity. It actually got me my first in-house position in the pharmaceutical space. So I'll get to that. But so after getting my MBA, shortly thereafter, I joined a pharmaceutical company. And I was a clinical consultant. And that meant basically I was educating nephrologists and nephrology dietitians on medication called Zemplar. And it's the active form of vitamin D that's provided to dialysis patients during dialysis treatments. And as a dietitian, I was dosing that medication, of course, under the doctor's supervision, but I was dosing it, titrating that medication. So I was very well versed on that medication and how to dose it and titrate it and how to talk to patients about it. So that was a good segue into moving into the pharmaceutical industry. I was also on a speakers bureau at that time for Abbott Renal Care and Genzyme. I'm not even sure if Genzyme is even around today, but that was another part of my strategy for moving into the pharmaceutical space, is getting that public speaking experience and just getting out there and getting your name known. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's super interesting. I didn't know that about your career path. So you started out in the field. Well, you took your knowledge in renal nutrition and nephrology and brought that to the field then where you're working with the patients, you're working with physicians for the pharmaceutical company. And then I thought that's genius actually within the corporation, to get on their speakers bureau, to get your name out there. And then from that, is that how you got known, or is that how your name got known to be able to move in-house?
That's how my name got known, to get that clinical specialist job, my first job in pharma. It also helped that somebody recommended me. So back then, and I'm not sure it's changed very much today, but back then you really needed to know somebody inside in order to get your name in front of the hiring manager.
I think that's kind of the case for a lot of, whether it's getting a job or getting known within your company. I think having somebody that's your ally, and that goes for a lot of different areas and different fields, or sort of making the effort to find a mentor, to find an ally. I think you're right. That's a really great advice. Yeah.
I mean, and even if you don't know anybody right now in-house, you can leverage LinkedIn, and through your network, you might know somebody. For example, you might know me and I know somebody at that company, and I can vouch for you and your skills. So that's how you can leverage LinkedIn. LinkedIn is phenomenal that way.
I
And
agree.
that's how I was able to land several of my jobs over the course of my pharmaceutical career when I got displaced. So that's another ball of wax. We're not going to get that into that in this interview,
Right.
but that kind of goes with the territory of being in
Yeah.
pharma. You do get
Yeah.
displaced, you know? But
Yeah.
anyway, so going back to how I got my in-house position to answer your question, that really was my MBA. I recall back then the hiring manager was looking for a dietitian that had their MBA. So as soon as I put my resume in front of him, he's like, "Yep, you're hired. When can you start?" It was that simple, really. I mean, you go in there, you showcase your skills. It's not just about education, but it's also how effectively can you communicate? How effectively can you tell a story? I mean, can you tell a story? Storytelling is absolutely critical during an interview.
I think that's a great segue into how people can actually get these jobs. So I very curious how you got into your second pharmaceutical industry. You mentioned that it was the MBA that sort of opened up the door for that position. Was it just having a graduate degree, or was it specifically having the business background?
It was both. It was having the graduate degree, it was having the sales experience, being out in the field, working side by side with a sales rep. Um, I I wasn't considered a sales rep, but I was considered part of the sales team
Mm.
because I was supporting my sales rep. So we had a territory, and I was responsible for the nutrition education, for the education around secondary hyperparathyroidism. And we were a team. We worked the territory together. So having that experience and also being a nephrology dietitian
Mm.
really, really helped me get that position. So at that time, I was working in Abbott Renal Care. And this particular manager was looking for somebody to manage their publication strategy
Mm.
across global, US and outside of US. So that was a super cool job. Now, today, you can't have a commercial person that owns the publication strategy. The rules in pharma have become very, very strict. There is a lot of firewalls between commercial and medical affairs. So that technically was a medical affairs job that today would not be supported by somebody in commercial.
Okay, that makes sense. All right. So, thinking of our audience, thinking about dietitians who are interested in going into this field, or it sounds like there's a few different ways that people can be successful, even presenting themselves. So, you talked about LinkedIn. Are there any keywords that their LinkedIn profile should be highlighting or on their resume should be highlighted that would make somebody more attractive in the application process, just starting way back at the beginning, whether somebody wants to go into being a technical expert in nutrition for the pharmaceutical industry or into sales? Are there special keywords they should be having on their profiles?
It's a good question. I think looking at the job description and looking for keywords there that you can pull out and drop into your cover letter and your resume. But I think what's really most important, we have AI as well that's involved now with respect to resume screening. I think there's like something like I read the other day, 800 different applicants for one job, and it's a different time right now. But I think it's all about acing that interview, and really looking at it from how are you going to provide value to that hiring manager? What are you bringing to the table that will differentiate you from the other candidates? And I like to share the STAR format. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So when you're answering a question, you want to answer it in a way of, okay, what was the situation? What was the task? In other words, what were you responsible in doing? Not this we, but what did I do to contribute to solving this problem? Action is what was the result or what was the outcome? And then result is, well, what was the outcome for the company? Not just for the immediate stakeholder, but the company at large. So that is a really nice format when you're answering a question. It really exemplifies your role in that particular situation. And it showcases to the hiring manager what kind of value you bring to the table. And lastly, I want to mention that when you're interviewing for a job, you got to always be thinking about the next job. Let's just assume you get the job. So when you're interviewing, ideally you want them to think about you as she's got potential beyond this position. She's going to go somewhere. So we want to snatch her because she's top talent. So always thinking about interviewing for the job after that one.
Oh, Maria, you have like my brain swimming. First of all, you're speaking my love language when it comes to job interviewing, and that is always have these success stories and turn them into what your value is so they can see what your potential is. You know, talk about a story. You mentioned storytelling and being able to show and have that look at the value you provide, the results that you're providing both for the position, but also for the company. It's all about business. The business wants to succeed, and how can you support the business in their success? So that is everything, right? That's everything that I like to share as well. But you said something interesting that I don't think anyone else has really mentioned before. You talk about working as part of a team, but I think it was nice to hear that you're isolating out yourself. You're the person that's being hired. Yes, you can work on a team, and I think that's good to bring up, but also that you're the one that was executing and implementing and creating the value. So it all came back to you, and that's very valuable for people to hear. All right, then the other thing is, look ahead. So how would an applicant know what that next step is? I think it's obvious for like a clinical dietitian, maybe the next step up would be a clinical nutrition management position. How would somebody know in the pharmaceutical industry what the next promotion is, or what the future looks like for that person?
Check out LinkedIn, check out a dietitian, or maybe it's not a dietitian, someone that has that position that you're interested in. Send an email, a note to them, and introduce yourself. And if you need help doing that, and maybe it might be helpful to tap someone that might know that person. But that never stops me, really. I'm pretty gutsy. I usually just send people emails, even though I'm a complete stranger. Most people will respond. Most people are generous with their time. That's been my experience. And ask them questions about how they got there. Ask them about their career path. Ask them what they love, what they hate about their job, what they would do differently if they could do it all over again. So you just pepper them with questions and then give them something back. You know, don't just take, but also offer them something. You know, it could be a 15-minute complimentary session or something. I don't know. For example, I just had my photo shoot done last year for my website, and my kitchen wasn't big enough to do my photo shoot. So I asked my friend, and she asked her daughter, and it ended up being done in her daughter's kitchen. So I ended up giving this woman a free nutrition consultation for 45 minutes. So just gives you an example of that's something that we could do, you know?
Right. Networking around, exactly, too. And I think that's really great. All right. So I'm curious about skills that you were born with, you personally, that made you successful in all of your endeavors, and maybe skills that you have learned along the way from others or realizing that you need to do it. I'm going to speak for you first. I think your public speaking and your sort of perseverance, your confidence in persevering are certainly skills. I don't know if you were born with those or if you have learned them along the way, but tell us about your skills.
Well, I'll tell you that my husband always says that I tend to jump in first and ask questions later. And I tend to be a bit fearless. So, and I think I was born that way. And there's a lot to be said for being fearless and not feeling stuck, because we tend to get paralyzed the more we think about things or the more we're stuck in our own head. And that could prevent you from diving into situations or throwing your name in the hat for a position. So fearless is one thing. Second, resiliency and adaptability. I gained that through all the various positions I held over the 21 years in the pharmaceutical space. You had to be resilient. You had to be adaptable, because you could come into the office one morning and have your to-do list, but it gets hijacked 20 minutes into the day and you're working on a fire drill. And that happened all the time. So you had to learn to be resilient. You had to learn to reprioritize your priority list. And every single day, it seemed like it was like that in pharma, because the demands were high. The positions that we were in, they were stressful, and they were important positions. And the company was keeping a keen eye on those positions and the outcome of the department or the groups. I think that's pretty much why I became so resilient in my day-to-day endeavors.
See that being helpful when you're in the interview process, or maybe putting on your resume, or creating a success story in the STAR method, or the method I use called the SHOW method. that coming up with a scenario where you are able to demonstrate your adaptability, how you're able to juggle different priorities and still have a great outcome, I think that could be an interesting skill to highlight in success stories or in the interview process. So thank you for that. That was really interesting. So for dietitians looking to be successful in this area, in addition to what you said, being that you are fearless, that you're a good, I think you're a good perseverer, and being adaptable and resilient. Are there other skills that dietitians should be thinking about, either expanding or highlighting that they already have?
Well, you bring up a great point. So you mentioned skills that they might already have. I really think that dietitians should hone in on something they're super passionate about and creating a niche for themselves. Because when you're super passionate about something, your light shines and that passion will attract people to you. So, I mean, take for example, I opened up a private practice last year. I left pharmaceutical industry in 2023. I took a small little break. And in September of 24, I opened up a private practice. And that was through self-discovery and a journey of realizing what my true skills and talents were and what my passion was. And I have to tell you, I absolutely love it. I love it. And here I am re-entering the field again after 21 years, right? And sure, it was a little scary. I didn't have all the answers when I decided to do this. I didn't know what to do and where to go. But really, the first thing I did was join the academy, join the DPG, Nutrition Entrepreneurs, and the business, dietitians of business and communications. And there was a wealth of resources and a wealth of experience and people that I met. So I guess to answer your question, it's just go after what you're passionate about and don't sell yourself short because you probably have something there and you can monetize it.
I love that you're not the first person that has highlighted the passion. And I like what you said about how that attracts other people to you because it makes the topic, the area, the niche, like really interesting and exciting. So I love that you said that. Another area that I was going to tap your brain for, a lot of dietitians are not happy with their salary, with the income that they're generating, or just generally not happy within the field of dietetics. But specifically speaking about money, how do you think that dietitians can be making more money?
Well, I think they can look at their current place of employment. And again, look to see what positions at their current place of employment they have their eye on, something that's interesting and appealing. Again, do an informational interview with the person that's holding that job. And an informational interview is something like, I'm interested in what you're doing, and it might be something I may want to do down the road. And it's a good strategy because when that position opens up and you make an impact in that informational interview, they're going to think about you. They'll remember you if you made an impact and they'll tap you for that job. So that's one way, is look outside your own little bubble, your own little world of dietetics, and look to see what other positions are there. And it is a challenge because people tend to box us in as the food police or whatever, however we get labeled. So we do have to try strategically to break that label so people can look at us differently. And that's, how are we showing up at the table? How are we showing up? What kind of words are we using at the table? Are we using business and professional terms? Do we understand the business? And if we don't, how can we better understand the business? And that information right now is at everybody's fingertips. You can read analyst reports. You can listen to analyst, investor relations meetings. Those are all recorded and they're all on the company's website. So you can listen to those reports. You can listen to what are the investors asking about? What are they curious about? That gives you leads on what the business is focused on and what the business really wants to make sure they nail and get it right. So that's one way dietitians can elevate or level up their skills.
I love that. I think that's helpful for dietitians who are working for companies now. Again, always going back to the idea that it's business and how can you have that business be more successful, and show in the eyes of your boss, your grand boss, that you are on board with this, that you're not a passive individual that's a victim of their position, of their job, of their salary, right? I think you're such a great cheerleader for being a go-getter and being resourceful. I think that's a great idea to look for what is it that the shareholders are looking for bigger companies that are traded publicly, and maybe even smaller companies, like what are their key performance index or their indices they're looking for to improve? How are they being judged? How do they know that they're being successful as a business besides just generating money? How did they generate more money? And how can you be a part of that? Because again, it is just business. And if you're not working for another company, if you're working for yourself as an entrepreneur, that's your customer, whether it's your physicians for referrals or the person, whoever is paying you money. Understand what it is that can make them successful with your services, and making sure that you're always thinking of that as top of mind and being able to provide those services. Maria, that was so awesome.
And one more thing, I think what you can do is, if you want to get known outside of your own little bubble, is talk to your manager about being placed on some kind of committee or something that's happening at your place of employment. So you get broader exposure to other functional teams and groups. And then that label can begin, we'll start breaking down that label of being the food police or whatever it is, because they'll start seeing you differently if you come to the table with innovative and solution oriented ideas. So whether it's a hospital committee or some kind of work stream, there's always opportunities at your place of employment. You just got to ask. And if you are not clear on how to go about it, seek out a mentor or some kind of confidant, someone that you can talk to that has done this before. There's lots of mentors in our world, right? In the world of dietetics. You're a mentor. That's what you do for a living. It's something that I'm thinking about doing, being a career coach or a thought partner, not just for dietitians, but for others, because I'm finding that people are hungry for this information. They really need kind of a thought partner, somebody just to talk through this and just to make sure, hey, am I on the right track?
I think you're right. I think having a coach or someone to a sounding board, or whether it's a mastermind group for careers, I think that is a way that we can really lift the tide for all dietitians personally, but also for the entire profession. I think that's really helpful. Maria, thank you so much for all of your expertise, your insights. On behalf of all the dietitians and health professionals listening to this, that was amazing. Thank you so much. Everybody, you can connect with Maria on LinkedIn, of course, and I think she would be able to both provide a connection and maybe even a connection to the next person that you're very interested in, but also provide some assistance. And like she said, like just having a mentor in this area can be really, really helpful. So Maria, thank you so much for your time today. And everybody else, I look forward to our next session. So everybody, bye for now. Thank you, Maria.
Bye-bye.